Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really important, something that affects so many people. Toxic relationships. It can be a really tough subject.
It absolutely can be. Heavy stuff. But, understanding it is so crucial for your own well-being, for building healthier connections in your life.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we've gathered a bunch of insights, articles, notes, and we're going to try and unpack it all. We want to figure out, what are these relationships? How do you spot them?
And what's the real impact they have? Also, maybe surprisingly, why people might get drawn to them in the first place.
Yeah, that part's fascinating. And then, crucially, how do you navigate away from them? Or, start healing afterwards?
It's about mapping out this difficult territory, really, so you can find a healthier path forward.
Okay, let's dive right in then. When we say toxic relationship, what are we actually talking about? What's the core of it based on this material?
Well, the key thing that comes through from the sources is it's not about, the odd argument or bad day. It's really defined by a recurring pattern, a consistent way of interacting.
A pattern. Okay.
Yeah, a pattern that regularly leaves you feeling unsupported, misunderstood, maybe demeaned or even attacked.
So it's persistent. It's the overall dynamic, not just a blip.
Precisely. And this pattern, over time, it just erodes respect, erodes that feeling of being a team. It leads to emotional harm, psychological harm, and sometimes, sadly, even physical harm.
And it's not just romantic relationships, right? That's a key point.
Oh, absolutely. The sources are really clear on this. This toxicity, it can crop up anywhere with family, friends, people you work with, even in wider social groups.
That's so important to remember. We often jump to thinking about partners.
We do. But it could be that friend who always puts you down, or the family member who's hypercritical. A major sign, according to the research, is that the bad moments, the negative feelings, they just consistently outweigh the good ones.
You leave interactions feeling worse off.
Exactly. You feel drained, depleted, like your energy has just been sucked away after being around them.
Okay, so that pattern of harm, feeling drained, showing up in different places, let's talk about those different forms. What kind of faces can this toxicity wear based on the material?
Yeah, it manifests in, slightly different ways depending on the relationship type, even though the underlying feeling is often similar.
Okay, what about toxic friendships? What does that look like?
Well, the sources describe things like constantly pushing your boundaries, even after you stated them. Annoying behaviors that just don't stop. And a big one is defensiveness. Like, if you tried to talk about the issue, they just shut down and turn it back on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's also often a real lack of support. They're not really there for you when you're struggling. Instead, it might feel like constant competition. They can't seem to genuinely celebrate your wins.
The friend who subtly downplays your success or makes it about them somehow.
Spot on.
Yeah.
That kind of dynamic. Then you have toxic family relationships, which can be, particularly painful.
I can imagine.
Here, the sources talk about things like constant comparison. You're always being measured against someone else, a sibling, a cousin, whoever, and usually coming up short.
Oh.
Yeah. There's this persistent feeling that you're just not quite good enough for them. They often believe they're always right. They might try to make decisions for you, even when you're an adult.
Trying to control your life.
Right. And dismissing your feelings. Like, if you're upset, they might tell you you're overreacting or shouldn't feel that way. Lots of negative or critical comments, too. Sometimes, wrapped up in fake niceness or flattery that just feels off.
That superficial layer makes it confusing. What about at work? We spend so much time there.
Workplace toxicity is a big one. Based on the material, it often involves undermining. Maybe a colleague makes you feel like your job isn't as important as theirs, acts superior, tells you how to do your job.
The know-it-all.
Exactly. Or the gossip, the one who spreads negativity and creates drama. And then there's just the sheer energy drainer. The person who complains constantly about everything, bringing everyone down.
The workplace version of feeling depleted.
Totally. Then there are toxic social relationships. The sources describe these as often driven by a need for dominance, like social interaction is a game to win.
Interesting.
Yeah, these people can be incredibly charming at first, really good at faking emotions to draw you in. But once you're sort of hooked,
Then the mask slips.
they start devaluing you, maybe subtly ignoring you, minimizing your contributions. It can be really painful and confusing after that initial charm.
Wow. Okay, and the last one mentioned was toxic competitive relationships.
Right. These are marked by a real lack of empathy. It's not healthy competition. It's one person actively trying to undermine or belittle the other person just to feel superior, to feel in control. It's about dominance, not mutual growth.
So many variations, but that core of disrespect and harm runs through them all. Which leads to the big question for anyone listening. How do you actually know if you're in one? What are those key signs?
Yeah, the material points to a whole cluster of warning signs. One of the biggest is that imbalance, feeling like you're always giving way more than you're getting, pouring in energy, time, emotional support.
And getting very little back.
Exactly. And it leaves you feeling weak, just totally drained. That's a huge one.
That erosion we talked about.
It is. Another is that persistent feeling of being disrespected. Like your basic needs, your feelings, they just don't matter to the other person. And over time, that chips away at your self-esteem. You start feeling less confident.
Yeah.
And of course, those core feelings we started with, feeling unsupported, misunderstood, demeaned, attacked,
Yep.
if that's your regular experience in the relationship, that's a direct sign.
And how does it actually feel in the moment or right after you interact with them?
That's a really telling indicator.
Yeah.
Do you feel depressed or angry or just exhausted after you talk to them or spend time with them? If they consistently drain your energy, pay attention to that. The sources also mentioned that these relationships can bring out the worst in you. You know, maybe you become unusually spiteful or jealous around that competitive friend. You find yourself acting in ways you don't even like.
Like they trigger something negative in you.
Yes, another sign. When they distort your image, they might fixate on one single trait. Maybe you're naturally quite chatty and use it constantly to put you down, making it seem like you're defining negative feature, ignoring all your good qualities.
Creating a caricature of you.
Exactly. And then there's that feeling of walking on eggshells. You're constantly censoring yourself, worrying about saying or doing the wrong thing, terrified of setting them off.
That must take enormous energy.
It does. You spend so much emotional energy trying to please them, trying to get it right, but it never seems to work. It feels like you can never get their approval or make them happy. And this often goes hand in hand with just a basic lack of respect and kindness. Conversations might be full of sarcasm, criticism, maybe even open mockery.
So warmth and support are missing.
Definitely.
Jealousy and envy often replace cooperation, and control is a big factor. The toxic person might try to control you, sometimes subtly through guilt trips or manipulation, sometimes much more obviously through demands. Frequent lying is another red flag mentioned. And ultimately, it's that constant feeling of stress and unease around them. Just this background hum of anxiety, even when nothing specific is happening. The stress is the relationship.
That internal tension.
Yes. And look, we have to be really clear here. Any kind of physical or verbal abuse isn't just a sign. It's a definite indicator of a toxic, harmful situation that needs immediate attention and likely outside help. Also, excessive control, like demanding to know where you are constantly, getting angry if you don't reply instantly, that points to deep issues with trust and control.
Those are really clear, powerful signs. And the impact. What kind of toll does this actually take on someone based on what the material says?
Oh, the toll is huge. It's pervasive. We're talking about a heavy emotional and mental burden. Constant anxiety, finding it hard to focus, your self-esteem just getting ground down.
Yeah.
People often feel guilty for no reason or experience deep sadness, even depression, restlessness, trouble sleeping, because your mind is just constantly churning, replaying things, worrying about the next interaction.
It sounds completely exhausting.
It is. And all that chronic stress leads to real physical and psychological exhaustion, like a general malaise, just feeling unwell much of the time. The sources even link it to physical symptoms, chronic headaches, fatigue, stomach problems.
Wow.
And often, people start neglecting their own health because they just don't have the energy or motivation left. The relationship consumes everything.
It's like becoming a shadow of yourself.
That's a perfect way to put it. One description that really stood out was feeling like you become a faded version of yourself, held back, unable to pursue goals or enjoy life.
Such a clear and devastating picture. Okay, now for maybe the trickiest part the sources tackled, if it's so bad, why? Why do people get drawn into these relationships, or why do they stay? There are some really surprising insights here.
There really were. And it's so important to understand these aren't, simple choices or character flaws. They're often rooted in complex psychological patterns that make leaving incredibly hard. The sources laid out about 10 key reasons.
Okay, let's unpack those. This is fascinating.
Right. So first, low self-esteem. If deep down you don't believe you're worthy of love and respect, you might unconsciously gravitate towards partners who confirm that negative view. Criticism, manipulation, it could feel weirdly familiar or deserved.
It fits with how they already feel about themselves.
Exactly. Second, childhood trauma. Growing up with conflict, neglect, or abuse can actually normalize unhealthy dynamics. So later in life, people might unconsciously repeat those patterns, almost like trying to fix the past. The toxic feels, well, normal.
The early wiring gets set in an unhealthy way.
Precisely. Third, emotional dependence. Relying heavily on others for your sense of self-worth or emotional stability. This can make you overlook huge red flags because you crave that validation, even if it comes from someone controlling.
Seeking connection, even if it's harmful.
Right. Fourth, unhealed past experiences, maybe not childhood trauma, but other painful events that haven't been processed can leave you vulnerable, maybe distorting how you see potential partners.
Old wounds influencing new choices.
Fifth, a lack of clear personal boundaries. If you haven't learned to set and enforce healthy limits, it's like leaving the door open for manipulative or controlling people to walk right in.
Makes you an easier target in a way.
Unfortunately, yes. Sixth, low self-awareness. If you don't really understand your own emotions or needs, it's hard to recognize toxic behavior in others. You might mistake control for care or jealousy for passionate love because you haven't developed that internal radar.
Confusing intensity for intimacy, maybe.
That's a great way to put it. Seventh, a powerful fear of loneliness. Just the idea of being alone can be so terrifying for some people that they'll stay in a deeply unhappy, even harmful relationship just to avoid it.
Choosing known pain over unknown emptiness.
Eighth, what the sources called a savior complex, or having unrealistic expectations. This is the belief that your love can change the toxic person. You stay, pouring everything in, hoping to fix them, but that kind of transformation is really rare without their own commitment.
Trying to rescue them, but drowning yourself.
Ninth, a really deep need for acceptance. Maybe from early experiences, you feel this intense need for approval.
Yeah.
So you prioritize the other person's needs way above your own, tolerating bad treatment just to avoid rejection.
Putting yourself last to feel accepted.
And finally, the sources also mention things like codependency, feeling responsible for the toxic person's emotions or actions. And then there are the practical barriers. Money, kids, maybe still feeling love, shame, fear, or even being manipulated into thinking you're the real problem.
Wow, that's a complex why. It really shows why just leave is rarely simple advice. So given all that, can these relationships ever be fixed?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The material suggests, well, yes, repair is possible sometimes, and this is a huge item, but it absolutely requires both people to be genuinely committed to change. One person can't fix it alone.
Okay, so mutual commitment is key. What else needs to happen?
Both people have to be willing to take responsibility for their part in the toxicity. No blaming. They need to acknowledge the harm caused and become more self-aware about their own behaviors.
Owning their stuff.
Exactly. And there has to be a real willingness to put in the effort. Have those difficult, honest conversations, spend quality time focused on reconnecting, actively work on changing the dynamic. A massive part of this is shifting communication.
So?
Moving away from blame, it's your fault, towards understanding and teamwork. Things like, okay, I think we misunderstood each other there. Can we try that again? Or I hear that you're upset. How can we work through this together?
Shifting from opponents to partners, solving a problem?
That's it, precisely. Building healthier ways to talk, listen, and support each other without manipulation. Reestablishing respect and kindness is fundamental. And setting and actually sticking to healthy boundaries.
And if that mutual effort isn't there?
Then, honestly, the sources are pretty clear. Lasting change is very unlikely. And in that case, ending the relationship might be the necessary choice for your own health and sanity.
Right. So if leaving is the path, what does that recovery journey look like? It must feel pretty daunting.
It is a journey, for sure, and it takes time and conscious effort. But the material outlines some really helpful steps. The absolute first step, the foundation really, is acceptance and acknowledgement.
Facing the truth.
Yes. You have to really accept that the relationship was harmful. Stop making excuses for it. Stop minimizing it. That honest acknowledgement is crucial to start healing.
Okay, what comes next?
Often, the next practical step is to cut off contact, or at least create significant distance. Block numbers, social media, whatever you need to do. If you have to interact, like with co-parenting or work.
Keep it minimal.
Exactly. Keep it strictly necessary, brief, and maintain strong emotional boundaries. Create that space you need.
Makes sense.
Third, and this is so important, build a support system. Don't go through this alone. Lean on your trusted friends, your family. Talk about it. Let yourself feel the emotions. Cry, vent, whatever you need. Let people support you.
Find your healthy tribe.
Definitely. Fourth, prioritize your health. This is about reclaiming yourself physically and mentally. Get active, eat well. The sources really emphasize how much this helps combat the effects of chronic stress. It's basic self-care, but it's powerful.
Refueling your own tank.
Exactly. Fifth is a mindset shift. From victim to survivor. It's okay to acknowledge you were victimized, but don't stay stuck there. Actively see yourself as strong for getting out, for moving forward. One bad experience doesn't make you a failure.
Reclaiming your power.
Sixth, reconnect with your interests. What did you love doing before this relationship took over everything? Dive back into hobbies, passions, activities. Fill that space with things that bring you joy and help you rediscover yourself. Invest in your relationship with you.
Remembering who you are.
Seventh, trying to focus on the present. It's so easy to get stuck replaying the past or worrying about the toxic person. Gently bring yourself back to the here and now. You can't change the past or other people, only your own path forward.
Stay grounded.
Eighth, and this can be tough, but it's vital. Forgive yourself. Stop beating yourself up for getting into it, for staying, for not seeing it sooner. Be kind and patient with yourself. Understand the complexities involved. So many people go through this.
Self-compassion is key.
Absolutely. Ninth, as you start to feel stronger, begin to define future relationship desires. Think about your values. How do you want to feel in a relationship? What are your non-negotiables now? What red flags will you absolutely not ignore again?
Learning the lessons to build better.
Right. And finally, 10th, seek professional help. Seriously consider talking to a therapist or counselor. It's a sign of strength, not weakness. They can help you rebuild confidence, process everything, understand the patterns, and develop strategies to avoid repeating them.
Getting expert support for the journey.
Exactly. And just remember, this recovery path is unique to everyone. It takes time. Be patient, be kind to yourself, and celebrate every single step forward.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've gone from understanding what toxic relationships are and how they show up, to the impact they have, the complex reasons behind them, and, importantly, the paths towards fixing them or healing after leaving.
Recognizing these patterns is just such a powerful first step. It's about protecting your peace, your well-being, and making space for relationships that genuinely support and uplift you. Taking action is about reclaiming your life.
It really is. So as you're thinking about everything we've discussed today, the signs, the impact, the healing, here's something to reflect on. What does a truly healthy, supportive relationship actually feel like to you? And based on what we've explored, what's one step, even a small one, that you could take towards cultivating or finding that kind of connection in your own life?